everybody. My daughter just asked me to.
Small business is a part of all of us each and every day. It's where we eat, it's where we shop, it's where we go to meet our friends and colleagues. In the wake of COVID-19, our small business community desperately needs our help. We must do our part to help our local communities to once again thrive. We must focus our attention on the small businesses that are the fabric of our great nation. ShareUp is a network of small business owners, their employees, and local consumers all working in unison to support each other. By creating incentives for consumers to think local before considering regional and national providers to fulfill their needs, we create local job opportunities and rebuild our communities. In addition, through AI-driven tools and machine learning, in just 5 minutes a day, ShareUp assists business owners in improving their social media presence, which enhances their visibility among consumers and levels the playing field so that local businesses can better compete with large, name-brand online competitors. When local businesses leverage the ShareUp platform, full-time and part-time employees, whether W-2 or 1099, are rewarded with a variety of voluntary perks and member benefit options. These include discounts on the things people do every day, access to low-cost, subscription-based telehealth and teletherapy, discounted prescription drug plans, connection to exclusive Prosper resources, and so much more. All for less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day. The Jumpstart Marketplace is here to support the health and wellness of individual employees, as well as the health of businesses in the local communities in which we live and work. We're all in this together. So join us as we reinvigorate our local community and improve the physical and financial health of working America.
All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome back to the program. This is the Marketplace Reset. I'm Anthony Weeks, your host. I'm joined by my colleagues who are co-contributing co-hosts of the program. Today is especially a special broadcast this afternoon because we have a new member of the team. And we're excited because this will afford us an opportunity to really now look at collectively approaching a regional approach as opposed to just the US, but look at having a conversation across the board in terms of the things that affect us as a region, the Americas, the Caribbean, North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. We're broadcasting live on WSX 970 AM, on the Callaloo Network. We're broadcasting live on several social media platforms, but we rebroadcast on Temple Television. I want to welcome my colleagues, both Terry Coxum and Dr. Donna Green. Ladies, welcome to the program. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Karen Green, Dr. Karen Green.
We're good. Hi, Terry. Blessings.
Hi, blessings to you as well. Blessings to you as well. And hi, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be on today.
Fantastic. So, for me, I find time moves very quickly. I mean, we went back to the, starting at 12:30 Atlantic Standard Time, which is 11:30 your time, Eastern Standard Time. And, the ladies didn't realize how quickly the hour went by. Yeah. I mean, time flies, but it flies because when you have stuff of substance, when you have a lot to talk about, there's just isn't enough time to talk about it. Right. And we got a lot to cover. And let me tell you why. This segment, the first segment was on health and wellness. Mm-hmm. The second segment is going to focus on business, as always, the economy, but with the addition of our colleague, we now have the additional capacity to really dive into public policy. That's right. Public policy, not just from a U.S. perspective, but public policy across the region. Mm-hmm. We understand that we have to coexist as a region, mm-hmm. and the Caribbean region and Central America is the third border of the United States. And so one of SETI's initiative, this program is brought to you by SETI, and one of SETI's initiative to help strengthen greater tie, bilateral economic tie, cultural ties we have an initiative called CASE, Caribbean America's Single Economy. And that is a private sector initiative, led private sector initiative, to be able to work and partner with the public sector to talk about what are the things we need to do to really strengthen relationships in the region. And, you know, it was introduced during the Trump administration. It is now law. The law is called the U.S. the U.S. Strategic Engagement in the Caribbean. And what that speaks about, there's a commitment on the part of our Congress to be able to implement policies that's going to really impact and improve the lives of the people of the United States, but more important, the contribution of the Caribbean diaspora, Caribbean Americans living in the United States. We have shaped this country going back from the beginning of Alexander Hamilton, the founding of this country, to now we have Kamala Harris, the first female, but not only female, a person of color in the office of vice presidency. So we have been really playing a very key role. We've given a lot as part of this country, and I'm really excited about this new segment because we're really going to really connect the dots and really build that bridge to be able to better improve relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agreeing with all of the above and looking forward to the contributions of Dr. Karen Green. We've had the pleasure of working together back in Hillary days, right? Moving forward. I even had the opportunity to share some experiences with her at the DNC on the floor with Florida. And so I'm super excited that she's a part of this segment. And so in talking about business and the economy and of course public policy. So we're going to dive right in. I mean, we have so much going on in the world of business in New York. One of the things that is pivotal is that the mayor is saying that in September we're going to have full learning, in-person learning. And I think that's going to be huge, not just for businesses, but also for parents and for the students. And so I'm super excited about that. There is the PPP money that's available now, which is the Paycheck Protection Program that is available through your banking institution. So you'll be able to borrow money. Small businesses will be able to borrow money. I'm also looking at the Shutter program, and that's going to be for live venues. SBA, for the first time, they have a grant, not a loan. They have a grant that's available for small businesses that have live venue space. And so I'm asking, the money is going to be available soon. That's a part of the package, the stimulus package. So hoping that businesses will definitely take advantage of that, because as we know, our entertainment businesses have really, really suffered because they have not been able to be in to do their business as usual. And then of course the EIDL loan, which is the economic injury disaster loan, will be available as well. So those are opportunities for businesses, and we're looking forward to like diving in and really talking about how we can help the business. And again, on the marketplace, you can come in and you can be a part of the marketplace where you can, display your goods and your widgets. It's an opportunity for you to share here. So we want to help your business grow here too. So looking forward to talking more about that.
Thank you so much for that, Terry. That was excellent. Absolutely. Thank you. You did a great job with that. I would like to use this opportunity now to have our new colleague, our host, to talk a little bit about herself. Introduce herself and share a little bit about obviously who you are and why, you felt it necessary to be part of what we're doing and the contribution you hope to make to the program.
Thank you, Anthony and Terry, my beloved sister. Blessings. It's not only an honor, it is a duty for us to be here together. I think we're at a place in society where we have seen the devastation, not just economically, but the death within so many families. Mm-hmm. And we've seen also that folks from the Caribbean, or as Anthony rightfully said, we've been doing this for a long time, contributing to the mainland, mm-hmm. as we all know, from the notion that we have now really been taking off the colonial masks we've been wearing and coming to this place of contributions. I'm happy we're here, because what we now have is one Caribbean, one love, technically. There's so much to be done. As you rightfully said, the Caribbean Basin is truly the third border of the mainland of the United States. And it has also become one of the most, it is the gateway to the Americas. in so many reasons: security, trade, commerce, economy, you name it. Rightfully so, where Terry is in New York, we have seen the first real devastation that affected our community, because as we know, New York, Florida, and some of the other states in the Southeast house most of our Caribbean people. And we have really, really been affected by COVID. Mm-hmm. So we are ecstatic that in the first week of the new the 46th President Joe Biden, and one of our own, we can identify with Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden being one of the most empathetic, and as we all know, he also shares a Caribbean base at least annually, twice a year. We are hopeful that the understandings of the continuation of the Caribbean initiatives will now be personalized with someone who has the experience of dealing with it. I felt the need to be here. As you all know, I have served as the Caribbean Coalition lead in many political campaigns and presidential advancements. I currently live in the state of Florida, which is also the next part of the Caribbean. And I have had the opportunity of taking this, sitting in the room with policy advisors and serving as a senior advisor in many capacities to lead in our community and our community interests. So I am hopeful. I know what's going to happen now is we're going to definitely need the administration is not just going to need to see where they are, but our voices are going to be valid in knowing where we are. There's going to be a massive post-pandemic recovery that I know Terry and Anthony, you're familiar with. It's not just going to be from a health standpoint, but a recovery in so many other ways. And so I want to be a part of helping to advance those initiatives. I think collectively we can look at the areas where particularly our Caribbean community, the U.S. Virgin Island territories, we have a role to play. And one of the primary initiatives that President Joe Biden has first come out with is to look at how we're going to go about harvesting clean energy and how we're going to go about doing this economically. And where best to start than in the sunset region of the hemisphere of the Caribbean, next to the coast of Africa, to make sure that we can actually provide these kind of resources. And just to be clear, within the last 5 years, we've seen the devastation of these last hurricanes. Another major part of his initiative is to go back to the Paris Agreement, that accord, which is going to basically help with advancing science and how we respond to these Category 5 and higher storms. So I'm excited that I'm here with you as a family. Anthony, we've been there, and Terry, we started out here as well. How interesting is it? We're full circle back to trying to sustain society and do our part as a region. So we'll continue more. I trust that President Joe Biden will also go back not only with the Paris Accord for procuring or climate change, but also with the COVID crisis we face, going back to the negotiations of the World Health Organization, and also making sure that some of the resources that COVAX, which basically would afford for a Caribbean or Caribbean community to be able to afford the services provided. So I'm happy to be here. We're going to do more. I'm here not because as you all know, I have served in the Democratic Party in many capacities. However, I'm here today just as we were able to elect Joe Biden as a Democratic president, but we have a nonpartisan approach to securing the Caribbean territories. And so I am so happy to be here, and I look forward to advancing our development, our economic recovery, sustaining our society, and just doing our part with the pride of being a Caribbean islander. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I'd like to do before we're going to take a break, and before we do that, let me just kind of tell you what you can expect on the segment today. We're going to do an overview, an introductory overview of the U.S. Strategic engagement in the Caribbean. That is a U.S. law passed by Congress. It was a bipartisan law. It was not partisan, it was bipartisan. On both sides of the aisles, both Democrat and Republican saw the value, the importance of being able to strengthen the relationship in the region. Why? Because beside the U.S. is the largest trade partner with the Caribbean. I think that number was $14 billion, and that was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, when you think of the amount of trade between the Caribbean and the United States, it's $14 billion. The potential exponentially, this can go a lot, that number can go a lot higher, greater, but it's going to take both sides, public policy, governments throughout the region, and the private sector to be able to address critical infrastructure, logistical issues, security, you name it. And I'm going to give an overview, and then but before we go into the break, I'm going to play one of the first members of Congress who was responsible for sponsoring the law, who's no longer in Congress, but we want to thank that representative for making it possible. We're here today because I have been a steward. I've been an advocate for a long time. Before I moved back to the Virgin Islands, I was part of the New York Carib News Multinational Business Conference with the likes of Charlie Rangel, Mayor David Dinkins, Percy Sutton, to just give you a Dr. Donna Christensen, just to give you a sense of some of the people that we work in private sector. Butch Stewart, the late Butch Stewart, who was the founder of Air Jamaica and Sandals Resort. We literally toured the Caribbean every year, and every Caribbean would bid to be able to have this conference on their island. Former Congresswoman Donna Christensen and myself partnered together to bring the conference to the Virgin Islands. And it was the first time in the history of Congress where you had 22 members of Congress under the same roof outside of the U.S. mainland. We're part of the U.S., but when you think of the contiguous United States, we're not connected to the contiguous states. We are part of the United States, but we're a territory within the Caribbean. And it was the first time you had 22 members of Congress in the same room at an event. And then second, the defunct CCAA, the Caribbean Central American Action Lobbying Group, who was around for 40 years, are no longer in existence. They were an important body advocating the policy on behalf of the region. So there's a void in the space to tackle these important issues. And I am hopeful and very optimistic that SETI can partner and work collectively with other bodies, both governmental and private sector, to be able to advance what we call the Caribbean American single economy, as well as working in concert, in conjunction with the U.S. strategic engagement in the Caribbean. This is what we're all about. And what I'd like to do is take a break. We're going to take a break with this a piece from Congressman Ingle, who was responsible for passing this law, which is now law in the country.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, which I was proud to introduce, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I want to thank our Chairman, Ed Royce, for bringing forward my legislation to ramp up our country's engagement with our Caribbean neighbors. I also want to thank our former chair, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who joined me in offering this bill and who knows better than anyone the strategic importance of the Caribbean region. We spend a great deal of time focusing on challenges and opportunities in faraway places, but it's important that we never lose sight of our interests closer to home. Indeed, we should be working to strengthen our ties with countries in the Caribbean. That's the aim of this bill, which would prioritize U.S.-Caribbean relations for years to come. This bill would require the Secretary of State, along with the USAID Administrator, to devise a multi-year strategy for Caribbean engagement. We want to see how our diplomatic and development efforts are focused on the Caribbean, with particular attention to energy security, the rule of law, efforts to combat drug trafficking, and ways to enhance economic cooperation. We also want to increase our engagement when it comes to regional issues by improving our diplomatic efforts with respect to key votes at the United Nations and at the Organization of American States. In my view, the best way to put together a new strategy toward the Caribbean is to tap into the large and vibrant Caribbean American community here in the United States. I did that for the 4 years that I was chairman of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs Committee. So this bill underscores the importance of consulting with the Caribbean diaspora community, promoting their involvement in economic development and civilian security in the Caribbean. And finally, H.R. 4939 commissions 2 reports from the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, one which evaluates the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, and another which assesses U.S. diplomatic engagement in the Eastern Caribbean. I have long believed that we do a real disservice to our country by having no physical diplomatic presence in 5 of the countries in the Eastern Caribbean: Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I've long said it makes no sense for us to continue to conduct diplomacy on these islands from our embassy in Barbados. They say you can't conduct diplomacy from a bunker. It's also true that you cannot conduct diplomacy from hundreds of miles away. And I hope to work with the State Department to ensure that we establish a diplomatic presence in the Eastern Caribbean as soon as possible. China has it, Venezuela has it, others have it, we should have it. It's especially appropriate that we're considering this bill in June, which is National Caribbean American Heritage Month. As the President said in his proclamation, quote, "The bonds between the United States and the Caribbean remain strong, both rooted in similar legacies of trial and triumph, oppression and liberation. Our narratives have advanced on a similar path of progress, driven forward by our shared dedication to fostering opportunity and forging a brighter future," unquote. I couldn't agree more, so I urge my colleagues to support this measure, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is Anthony Weeks, broadcasting live here on WSCX 970 AM, broadcasting live on the Kalaloo Network, broadcasting live on Jumpstart TV, brought to you by SETI. We're broadcasting on Tempo Television as well, and we're also broadcasting on our Hispanic station, sister station, La Mega Mundial, in 90 Latin markets. And we're broadcasting throughout the United States on Verizon Fios, Time Warner Cable, throughout the Caribbean, in Guyana and Suriname in South America. Welcome back to the program. We broadcast weekly. This is the second segment, where we focus on business, the economy, and public policy. We have a new addition to the team. We're excited, and we just came out of a break. I hope that the piece we just played was where you heard one of the sponsor of the bill. You will hear from the second sponsor of the bill later on as well. But you heard from Congressman Engelman, former Congressman Engelman, in terms of his why he felt it was necessary to create a bipartisan approach to really addressing the relationship between the United States and the Caribbean. Let me get my colleagues to provide some feedback before I bring up the paper, the position paper, the white paper, as to what's in this new law that strengthened the tie between the United States and the Caribbean. Terry, what's your, after hearing what former Congressman Ingalls said, what was your takeaway? What would you understand? What did you know about it before, and what was your takeaway after hearing him doing that presentation?
Let me come off of mute. Sorry, guys. I knew about it because of the reports that I received. And more importantly, I had the opportunity to be the regional advocate for Small Business Administration, where I cover New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And so I can attest to the need to have a collaborative relationship between the Caribbean and the United States. And so we know that it was a necessary relationship. And so having that put forth was an added value. So right now, especially now with the economy being the way it is, and that the internet and technology has really opened up the world in a whole nother way. Like right now, we're broadcasting, like we're a testimony, right? We're broadcasting now. You're over in the Virgin Islands. Dr. Karen Green is in Florida. I'm here in New York. And we're able to have this show today shows that any one of our listeners, they can now understand that you can do business across the world through this technology. And so it's very important for the Caribbean community and for the United States to have one voice in this economy so that we can build it stronger. So I'm really happy about this, and I'm looking forward to Dr. Karen Green's feedback. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to having more collaborative relationships similar to this with the United States and the Caribbean, because it's very necessary.
Dr. Karen Green, before you continue, you are a contributor. You're a regular contributor. Yeah. You are a political powerhouse in the state of Florida. Florida is considered a battleground. Yeah. It was a battleground not in this recent election between Trump and Biden, but it's always been a battleground for prior presidential elections. Yep.
The Gore election is one.
It's a big state. It's still red. I know that the Democratic Party has tried to turn it blue. And the midterms is coming up, obviously. Right. But why do you think, and from your vantage point, you are a contributor. You're a political analyst, contributor regular to Fox Network in Florida, ABC and NBC. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you sense as you share and you provide insight and understand of where things are at within the state of Florida and the political landscape, and what you heard in terms of this new law, the U.S. strategic engagement in the Caribbean and going forward? What does that mean with this new administration?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a lot. But let me just say that hearing a congressman outlining the interests of the Caribbean interests, it is so accurate. Mm-hmm. As you know, I served as a senior advisor to Michael Bloomberg, as well as serving in an advisory role to the Hillary Clinton Caribbean Initiative. The good thing we now have, let me start with the great news first. In 2014, when now President Joe Biden was a vice president, he, in visit to Trinidad and Tobago, also enacted or introduced the CESI, which is the Caribbean Energy Security Initiative. I think it will be in its 9th year this year. And so we also have this collaboration, given the fact that the Caribbean region, as you now know, is going to be boundaries for so many reasons. We've talked about economy involvement, not only for Venezuela, China, and other nations. There's so much that this administration is going to have to tackle, because as we know, the natural resources out of Guyana and Venezuela right now is also going to be a negotiation, not only political, but economic, because of their resources. Where I stand as it relates to Florida, you're right. Florida is truly the gateway of commerce, education, trade, and immigration. We have long had the opportunity of not only being a part of this transition. The good thing is, and we can always say this, Terry and I can say the same thing, the Caribbean community has been consistently supportive of the Democratic Party. So as far as that demographic played nationally, we did do our part in securing this president. Beyond that, what we now know to be Florida has a very dynamic electorate. And the reason for that is because in the south part of Florida, we have a lot of Cubans. The migration of Cubans in South Florida, there's a culture of misinformation that has continued to stride in our society in Florida. And that was a big part of what we experienced in Dade County, where we lost the Cuban vote because of misinformation. The idea that socialism was what the Democratic Party emphasized we needed to have corrected that messaging. And so where we are today is we have corrected that in two ways. One, we, within the last month, a couple of weeks, we have now, the Democratic Party has secured a Cuban American, former Mayor Manny Diaz of Miami, an immigrant from Cuba, as the now lead for the Democratic Party. So as far as messaging goes, we want to make sure that is represented and communicated. We have on the Democratic Party there also a Jamaican who serves in the executive role as our state secretary. And I have had the tenure too of, in the recent administration of leadership, I served as the diversity and inclusion chair for the party. There's a lot of work to be done. But we all saw where the 29 electoral college that happened in Florida, Joe Biden became president without that. It says a lot. And so it says a lot about the fact that messaging, issues and initiatives is going to have to be the way we go forward. So to go back to the point where we are here, Anthony and Terry, our role is really going to have to be a way of uniting our Caribbean community. And we here on the American side of the belt, of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Florida in the Caribbean basin, we have a real role to play by looking at the recovery for COVID, for looking at developmental advancements, for looking at economical survival, and also trying to find ways and means of maintaining our small businesses that you heard outlined in that discussion and introduction by our former congressman. So yeah, I'm here. You're right. The discussions will continue. Time will allow us to continue to identify these pieces. What I will be bringing to this network and to this collaboration going forward is I'll be updating the current and the changes of legislation that becomes necessary. We've seen that within 10 days, there are almost 50 changes of reversing some of the things that were done by the former administration. One of the failures that happened under Donald Trump was the Venezuelan issues. And we could see that he failed in a very interesting way, that we now have not only an immigrant crisis, but also an economic crisis, where we know the first thing that this president had to do was to extend TPS for people coming out of Venezuela into the United States. So our conversation will be heated and of resource going forward. Terry and Anthony, I'll be tapping into partners and advanced information from our leaders as well as from our stakeholders who are interested in advancing this. I also know that this year in November, I think it will be the 9th year of that CESA initiative that then Vice President Joe Biden had introduced. And I think it will create an opportunity for all the Caribbean leaders to come together as one CARICOM nation to really look at how we're going to go about harvesting our resources, trade, commerce, and natural resources of agriculture, as well as our sunshine, to make things different.
Thank you so much for that. And it sounds like, Terry, you want to kind of chime in there, but let me add some color, if you will, to why this is paramount. The U.S. Virgin Islands, as an English-speaking U.S. territory, we are uniquely Americans in the Caribbean. Now, in the Caribbean, and the governmental body that represents the Caribbean, which is called the Caribbean Community, it's called CARICOM. Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, as two U.S. territories, we can't be members of CARICOM, but we can be observer on CARICOM. That means we can participate, but we don't have a vote, and we're able to participate when they do meet. I know that Puerto Rico has been actively involved in with CARICOM. The Virgin Islands, that I'm aware of, and anyone can correct me, I don't know of any representation over the years, a couple of decades that I know, that we've had someone appointed to that position. And I say that to say, in my official capacity, where I have an official appointment, I'm appointed by Governor Albert Bryan Jr. as the Special Economic Envoy to Taiwan and the Asian Pacific region. That's a relationship that was championed by my organization, by the private sector. And so we saw it, we were involved from the inception over a 4-year period to where it's now an official position, and I serve in that position. And I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, I am from the Caribbean. I am a Caribbean American. I am an American. We're a territory in the Caribbean region, but we still don't have any, if you will, formalization in terms of like the Virgin Islands have with Taiwan, an economic bilateral relationship with Taiwan. So I said something has to happen going forward, and this is why I know it's so important to be able to not only have this conversation, but to be able to execute a plan where we have this opportunity. And the reason why that's important is because the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, but we're talking about the Virgin Islands right now, we should be literally the driving force or a leading participant in being able to spearhead whatever the administration policy is or whatever the congressional law is. The Virgin Islands should be at the head of the table with our federal counterparts, partnering side by side with the Caribbean leaders to be able to strengthen this. CARICOM back in 1989 commissioned the Caribbean market single economy. They got it implemented partially, never completed it because they couldn't agree on the currency. But that's why we felt it was necessary to create the private sector version of that initiative called Caribbean American Single Economy. And so I wanted to be able to kind of give you that backdrop, if you will. And this is what the work that we're doing together as a group to be able to now hold the federal government, the White House and Congress accountable for what that plan is going forward, because it's about time we go from being an underserved region and the fact that the Virgin Islands is not at the table. We need to be at the table going.
Let me interject for a moment, because one of the things that I think we are now at an advantage of is that we have from the U.S. Virgin Islands, your congresswoman, your state representative, your regional representative is Stacey Plaskett, along with Congressman Darren Soto, who is of Puerto Rican descent. And we have seen, as well as Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, they have been collaborating in ways to make sure that the Caribbean interest is advanced. Right. For one, I've seen within the last week some of the resources going into your territory as it relates to the fiber optics and the solar energy and other natural resources. I think one of the things we probably will need to do, which is why this is so important as a body, is that there were policy discussions in 2016 on the Caribbean interest, as well as leading into this cycle. I think we're going to have to come together around initiatives and interests, right. Be agriculture, innovation, technology, trade, commerce, literacy, all the things that were outlined in, if you go back to President Obama's 2012 proclamation of the Caribbean, that had a big piece of unison that needed to be advanced. And so I think because of all the things that happened during that time, I think we are making a good move at this point to go ahead of it, to highlight those pieces, identify our leaders, and tag them a task to take care of these roles and create that liaison almost. Dave Sutherland, who is a stalwart of policy initiatives, who literally led that. He was a policy advisor for President Obama. Served with leading Hillary Clinton, and now he's here in this administration in a similar capacity. I think we have the ears. We now have the advocacy, and I think we have a point now where we can literally make recommendations, and hopefully we'll find the right carriers of our messages, as well as identifying these three leaders we now know who represent the interests of our people.
Yes, just as a point of clarity, yes, we know that our representative in Congress, delegate to Congress, Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and in Puerto Rico, as well as the Caribbean Americans that are serving in Congress as well. We know that's happening on a federal level. I know I was referring to it on the local level, where the local government to be actively involved. Okay, and so there is an absence of that presence a local level government to be able to be part of that process. That's what I wanted to clarify. Terry, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, because I think right now, I mean, Dr. Karen Green actually outlined some of the things that I wanted to say, but more importantly, I think the engagement, we should be engaging the local elected officials as well as the local community at this time. We have an absolutely amazing opportunity to do so because we have an administration that's willing to listen to the concerns. And so, you know, along with our federal leaders, I think that one of the things that we can even do here in the marketplace and on Jumpstart TV is start talking about some of those issues and concerns and make sure that we're getting our local officials as well as our local community involved, and then taking that interest in those concerns back to our federal officials and giving them the support that they need to be able to move the needle. Because I think the time is right now to move the needle. I think the opportunities are right now to move the needle. But more importantly, I think that our voices need to be heard. And so on this program, we will be talking about policies and issues and concerns around the Caribbean community, around the United States, around the collaborative, and how we can work better together. But I think we also need to start including some of the, and Dr. Karen Green and I will start inviting some of the local leaders on this show so we can talk about those interests and concerns, highlight them, and then make sure that all is accountable for moving the agenda forward. I think it's a time to do now. You know, no more sitting on the sidelines, no more seeing what other people can do. I think the time right now is for us to make it happen. And you're absolutely right, Anthony. It's been an absence, it's been a void for a long time. But I think right now is the right time to do it. So let's make it happen. I think that's what we should be doing.
And you have countries from the Asian Pacific region, like Russia and like China, that are actively trying to, if you will, try to build stronger relationship within the region.
That's right.
Start Venezuela in South America, Cuba, you know, all the other independent Caribbean islands, where you see investment capital being invested into these Caribbean islands, and we're seeing projects coming out of the ground with that. And so we can't take for granted. The U.S. can't take for granted the mere fact that we are strategically, adjacent to each other, and the Caribbean is the third border. That we just can't take for granted that someone can't come from out of nowhere and exceed what we're doing in the region. And so it is very important for us to be able to have that understanding. What I'd like to do is I'd like to play the Republican sponsor of the bill. So we get both perspectives. When we say bipartisan, we're not just saying it, but you can actually hear and see it was a bipartisan effort in Congress.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairman Royce. And I thank my good friend also, Mr. Engel, for their continued leadership, both of these great leaders, their longstanding commitment to greater engagement with the Caribbean, and for introducing this bill that we have before us today, H.R. 4939, the U.S. Caribbean Strategic Engagement Act. I'm also pleased to be an original co-sponsor and the Republican lead of Mr. Engel's legislation. Thank you, Mr. Engel. It is fitting that we bring this bill to the floor today, Mr. Speaker, during National Caribbean American Heritage Month. As a member from South Florida, I see firsthand the wonderful contributions that Caribbean Americans have made to our local communities. The Caribbean culture has had a great and lasting impact on our country and has helped bolster our society and has enriched our traditions. But while we celebrate the contributions of the Caribbean American community to our country, we must also dedicate ourselves to doing more to enhance our relations with our neighbors. U.S. foreign policy in recent administrations, be they Republican or Democratic, they have not strengthened our partnerships with the Caribbean in the right way. As Mr. Royce of California, our chairman, pointed out, our influence, our friendship with the nations has waned, allowing the negative influence of the dictatorships in Cuba and Venezuela to take root in the Caribbean. So deepening our strategic relationship with the Caribbean represents an extraordinary opportunity to expand our economic ties, to cooperate on security issues, to advance our values, our interests at institutions such as the OAS, the Organization of American States, and the UN, the United Nations. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, this bill is so important. It pushes the State Department to prioritize our relations with the Caribbean nations. It requires our State Department to develop a strategy to partner with our friends in the region on all issues, from counter-narcotics efforts to energy security to everything. There is a great potential for energy in the Caribbean, for example, but we must help nations break from their dependency on Venezuelan energy, especially as the Maduro regime is leading that nation to total chaos. We should help our neighbors take advantage of abundant and cheap natural gas and new advanced clean wind and solar technologies. In this way, we can help strengthen the economies of the region from the impact of the Venezuelan collapse, because the collapse is coming, Mr. Speaker, and take realistic steps toward reducing carbon emissions. This engagement has the benefit of being positive and sound foreign policy, but it is also great for our domestic policy. This bill will broaden our outreach to the Caribbean diaspora community here in the United States, which has been so instrumental in helping to shape and influence our great American story, and they deserve recognition and greater collaboration. I urge my colleagues to give their great support for this bill. I thank the Ranking Member Engel for his leadership, as well as Chairman Royce on this important initiative. And with that, I reserve the balance.
All right. So that was the Republican congressperson who was the co-sponsor of the U.S. Strategic Engagement in the Caribbean law that's on the books right now. It's an existing law. We're not speaking theoretically. Conceptually, this is a law that, like a lot of laws that are passed, laws are only good as they are when you're able to implement those laws. You can pass a lot of laws, but if you're not implementing the laws, then they're just simply laws on the shelf, like a book on the shelf collecting dust. And so you've heard two perspectives. Karen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring up the white paper. I'd like to do a screen share and just to kind of show folks what's in this law, so folks have an idea what that is. And let's see here.
Anthony, while you're bringing that up,
sure.
You know, the Congresswoman from Florida did mention those interests, but keep in mind, before that, we talked about Russia, China, Turkey, and the other nations that are interested in the Caribbean region. I've looked over the Biden engagement, and I see where his objective here is also to implement the DEF, which is the International Development Fund Corporation, which allows private sector to also get involved in investing in our region. So that's going to be another part of our discussion going forward. Absolutely,
absolutely. Let me just give an overview, and then you can offer some
Sure.
comment on this. So the U.S. strategic or U.S. strategy, I keep saying strategic, the U.S. strategy for engagement in the Caribbean basically states Caribbean 2020, a multi-year strategy to increase the security, prosperity, and well-being of the people of the United States and the Caribbean. The Caribbean region is the United States' third border, characterized by common interests and societal ties that yield daily tangible benefits for citizen. And let me just kind of enlarge so people can see. They can see the actual document itself. I'm not sure how well they're going to see it, but I'm reading it out loud anyway. And we talked about the citizens themselves in the U.S. The United States is the primary trading partner for the Caribbean, representing a vibrant economic partnership that in 2016 saw a $4.6 billion trade. I meant to say 4.6 billion. I said 14 billion trade surplus for the United States, but there's 14 million U.S. tourist visits and 11,042 Caribbean students studying in the United States. We also face many common threats across the region. Small but insignificant numbers of violent extremists from region have joined ISIS. The Caribbean countries have some of the highest murder rates in the world. Rising crime and endemic corruption threaten government's ability to provide security and good governance. They also drive irregular migration to the United States. As the United States works to secure its southern border, we should prepare for transnational criminal organizations to shift more of their operations to the Caribbean as a transit point of drugs, migrants, weapons, and other illicit activity. What do you say, Karen?
I say it's a heavy document and factual for the most part. We have an opportunity now to identify the challenges of crime, and I really believe it's economic support that's needed in these regions. It's even more devastating now with what we're now seeing in some of these countries that post-pandemic, no employment. We know that from the mainland, people from the Caribbean, when part of the sustenance of these nations is by or having to send resources, send money to these countries. With unemployment on the mainland, then it also creates more of a economic hardship on these islands. So I'm hopeful that some of the discussions that we will have in the next CARICOM and or Observatory of our region development and economic post-pandemic will come with some resources to offset that. You're right, there has been, those discussions are there. If you look at the Biden, as I said before, one of the great things we now have is the empathy of Joe Biden and the experience of Kamala Harris in an administration, surrounded by policy people who are familiar with these issues. And you and I, and those of us in our listenership and participation, will also want to voice our opinions and to help to collaborate the development of this document.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have about 5 minutes left, and what I'd like to do is get a sense of when you look at the role of Caribbean Americans, private citizens, and of course there's elected officials. We've seen a lot of over the years where the culture of the Caribbean has pretty much, we see it play out year in, year out. Okay, we celebrate who we are as a people and our culture, our food, way of life, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you think where we as private citizens can do more? Because it just seems like with so much emphasis on the politicians, the public officials, that over time it is kind of been sort of put in a box, and you pretty much know that when we look at the relationship between the United States and the region, it's predominantly tourism, and there's nothing wrong with that. Tourism is a $2 trillion industry, and certainly it's an industry that we should invest heavily in. But then when you put so much emphasis on tourism and neglect the other industries, private sector wise, I believe Michael Lee Chin said two things. He said that is when he talks about the opportunities in the Caribbean, he talks about the challenges of the Caribbean, and two of them are inefficiencies of systems and legacy systems in the Caribbean and the way things are done, and processes, and the lack of capital. What do you think more can be done on the private sector side, because we lean so much on the politicians and government to fix this problem?
Well, one, you stressed, one of the things that we have from the Caribbean always is our culture. It's not just tourism, but it has also been our tourists or entertainers or world-renowned artists have been impacted by this as well, because they literally tour, in most cases, to transport our music and our culture. And so we now have technology which needs to be enhanced. We now need to be spending more resources into making sure that our technology supports these initiatives and those economic balances. We have seen where, because of what we're doing now, televised across the country, we're going to have to spend some resources in our independent ways of doing things. For one, in the arts, in performances, in techno exchanges, we're going to have to find a way to do this, which is not just by coming to the shores, but by innovation. By far, we're going to have to do some innovation here. Tourism, as you know, when we get to that point, we're going to have to find some way of expanding, containing. How do we do this? Right now, most of these nations, for Europe and some of the other islands in Central America, this pandemic has really put a cease to some of these areas.
Yeah.
You know, Caribbean people on a whole, not only are we intellectual, we're technical, we're healthcare, we're frontline workers. So we have literally succumbed to this horrible experience. So as Terry would do, Terry having led in the business sector, what we need to do now is to be propelling our business owners into innovation.
That's right.
Find ways that we can actually exercise and sell our products or services, lean more towards these industries, I would recommend. And then to literally find the resources to enhance trade and direct marketing, I think is going to be a way for us to go forward.
Absolutely. And I would add, I would like for our businesses to take advantage of the federal government programs that are at no cost to them. So being a part of PTAC, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance at the SBA, being a part of the international trade, being a part of Department of Commerce and all of the programs, because those programs will help them be able to do business globally and also to offer some support and some resources. And so I'll ask our businesses right now is the time. I do business development in my consulting firm, Coaxum Connects, and I'm telling my businesses now, if you're not on the internet, you're not doing business. If you don't have a website, you're not doing business. You have to have a website. You have to have a way for people to pay you. If you're a restaurant, you have to have some kind of service, whether it's going to be Uber Eats or Grubhub. You have to have someone that's delivering food and picking it up from your business, because that's how you're going to sustain in these horrible times. You know, people are still ordering food. I tell my community, take advantage and make sure that you are continuing to take advantage of the services in your community, because you don't want those services to disappear. So I'm sure Dr. Karen Green can agree. We want to keep our businesses in business, and the way that we do that is by supporting them, by encouraging them, and by putting our money where our mouth is, actually putting money back into those businesses and having those businesses move forward. I'm going to add again, the marketplace is a place to do that. You can actually go on to the marketplace and be able to display your wares. You can sell your items, and that's an opportunity for businesses to get money to their coffers as well. And so take advantage of the technology, as Dr. Karen Green said. Take advantage of the innovation with obstacles or opportunities. So there are opportunities right now for businesses to grow. And so we here in our segment, we're going to be encouraging you. We're going to be inspiring you. And we're going to be giving you tools and tips and resources to move forward and compel. So thanks again.
All right. Well, we've come to the end. Time flies. I tell you, time flies when you're having fun. An hour went by like that. Would you believe that?
It did.
But ladies, I look forward to the special guest that we're going to bring in. A state representative, congressional representative, administration representative,
That's
representative
right.
from throughout the heads of states throughout the Caribbean, and leaders within the private sector, both public for profit as well as nonprofit organization.
Absolutely.
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
I want to thank you so much for your contribution on this segment, the second segment on business, economy, and public policy on the marketplace. I'm Anthony Weeks with my colleague Terry Coaxum and our new addition, Dr. Karen Green. We'll talk next week, guys.
Let's build wealth together.
Right. One Caribbean, one love.
That's right. One love.